All right, appears that we are back. I have no idea what just happened. My computer locked up. I mean, I lost the mouse. I lost the everything. I had to do a little, literally turn the power off. Good heavens. That wasn't cool at all. I don't even know where it died off. I was chatting with you guys and looked up there and I realized my picture had frozen. And then I was like, oh, I tried to turn the camera off and I realized I didn't have a mouse. And I mean, I couldn't get anything. Even Control Alt Delete didn't work. I was like, Control Alt Delete. And, oh, wow. And I tried the power switch and I was like, So I wound up going to the source and killing the strip, the power strip. This is what happens when you let Flegel run the technical side of things. I knew I should have picked Snort. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. That was, I mean, we're talking 100% total lockup. Talking about technology and war. Okay, thanks. Yes, I do. You know, like I said, I let Flegel do the tech instead of Snort, and that's what happened. So, okay, so the technology advances really quickly. They start learning how to make stronger wing spars and all this other stuff. In the aerodynamics, they're using wind tunnels, and the the reason that these technologies advance so far isn't that people are getting smarter in war. It's simply that now the resources are being allocated to it. They can hire all the engineers. They can run all the tests they want. You're allowed to have failure, stuff that, you know, in with peacetime parsimony, you just don't have. Plus, there's a push to do it. And the this Felix though was a redesign of the old Curtiss flying boat. You know, the Brits had bought some of Curtiss's flying boats and they liked them, but they knew that they could improve them. So it was and now don't get me wrong, I don't want to say the Felix though is a Curtiss or a copy of it. They used the Curtiss as the base, but they really did redesign the airplane and made a lot of changes. And the airplanes are constantly in evolution. It's like a lot of aircraft or military equipment. It's hard to say that. And when you're building models, this is even more so. As one of the things about making stuff that happens later in an event, like making stuff from 1945 instead of 1941, is it's almost impossible to be wrong because the technology keeps advancing. And often we think of, oh, this model was the follow-on to this model, but a lot of times the old model simply gets piecemeal improvements and never really comes up to speed. So you can make almost anything in 1945 with almost any parts arrangement. And there's a good chance that there was at least one of out in the field that probably was pretty close to that because guys are always scrambling to get what they can to get their hands on. But when you're dealing with the early war, that's when you can make the mistake. Because if you're dealing with an early version, you say, oh, this is the early one in 1941. Well, it's real easy to put on a part that wasn't invented yet. If you have, oh, here's some parts over here, let me stick that on. And it turns out that came from a 1944. So if you want to get picky about it, well, your model's wrong because that didn't exist yet. But you flip it, do a late war design. But getting back to the technology, a lot of this equipment, like examples of Stukas, or one could even argue the BF-109s, these were designs that were kept in service way past their expiration dates. And partly because they knew how to make them. They had plenty of parts for them laying around. It was hard to make anything that was significantly better. The only nation that really invented a better dive bomber by the way, and by the way, you guys probably know dive bombing pretty much evaporated at the end of the war. But the Japanese, their D4 series, their Judys, were a big improvement as dive bombers, and they actually accomplished what the Germans were not able to. The Germans were looking for a replacement for the Stuka. Well, the Stuka was pretty much outdated at the beginning of the war. It was a 1930s design, but it was simple, it was reliable, it was really good at its job. The main problem was it was slow and it couldn't defend itself. But they learned the Battle of Britain real quick that you could only use the Stukas when you had air superiority, and they kept using them ad hoc. We see the models of the big 37 millimeter cannons, and I think they only had 6 rounds of gun in a sleeve magazine, a harmonica magazine, but it's what they had, so it's what they used. And the Germans were trying to make a retractable gear replacement, but given material shortages and other priorities, it just never really happened. The Japanese, on the other hand, fighting more of a naval war where dive bombers were more important, as everyone got schooled on at Coral Sea and Midway. The emphasis was there, and the political and military will was there. So their duties and their some of their late war dive bombers are almost as fast as fighters, and they were pretty sophisticated. Even the British had come up with some airplanes that people tend to forget about that were a far cry from the Swordfish. And ironically, the Swordfish's replacement, the Albacore, which was another biplane. I know how people tend to form emotional attachments. But a lot of guys say that it wasn't really. I mean, it's still a fixed gear biplane, and it didn't really fly as nice as the Swordfish. It was heavier and a little faster, but they were like, yeah, this wasn't any great leap. Yeah, Lance. If your electronic's going to fail, it's going to do it when everybody's online chatting with you. But in the First World War, of course, there was a lot of low-hanging fruit. The aircraft were so primitive. Making advancements is pretty straightforward. The more advanced you get, the harder it gets to make significantly more advancements. But the still going from aircraft like the Taube and the Eindecker and the BE-2 and the Airco DH-4 or the Airco, the Pusher, going from those to airplanes like the D-8, the SE-5, the SPAD-13 in just a couple of years, that's still really fast. Rickenbacker liked the SPAD because it was fast, but it also didn't have great visibility and had a lot of rigging on it because it had those extra wing struts. When I had my lunch with Mike Machad, he's like, we talked about it. I said if I could equip my squadron with anything on the RAF side, it would have been SE-5As because they were docile, solid gun platform, reliable, fast, and they were just an all-around good airplane. Now, there were other fighters that had little advantages over, but don't forget these aircraft with the rotating engines, the Obersals and the Gnome rotaries. These aircraft they lost as many of those things in accidents as they lost probably in combat. And the Stuka, absolutely, Steph. The Stuka was definitely low priority. And that brings up, we're talking about technology. Why did dive bombers disappear after the war? I mean, the whole concept of dive bombing pretty much, we still had air support, but actual dive bombing, the Navy understandably said, look, we really only want to have 2 airplanes on the deck, bombers and fighters. Right now, we've got 3, 4, 5 different kinds of aircraft that all have different missions. So the Sky Raider, what would become the Sky Raider, the Douglas Sky Raider, kind of is the cure-all from the bomber end. It can carry bombs, rockets, you can sling a torpedo under it, whatever you want to do. And of course, planes like the Bearcat are the fighters, but then they realize, hey, the jets are coming in, props are going out, and of course the jets are what, I believe they call a disruptive technology. So the jets come in, all of a sudden everything swinging a propeller is out of date as a fighter. It's just like the famous Battle of Hampton Roads between the USS Virginia, which people call the Merrimack, which was its Union name, and the Monitor, the first clash of ironclads. Every naval officer who saw that knew as soon as those 2 ships started slugging cannonballs at each other and neither one of them went down, everyone knew that every single ship and every single Navy across the globe was now completely outdated, obsolete. And between 1864 and about 1880, about a 20-25 year period, you saw all these solid steel steam operated dreadnoughts coming up. And the first one I believe was the Royal Navy's HMS Dreadnought, which, of course, is why they're called dreadnoughts to this day. But the proximity fuse shot dive bomber without hitting the ships. Yeah, the proximity fuse probably more than any other single thing did in the reign of the dive bomber. Because don't forget, I don't know if you guys watch History Buffs, which is a really good YouTube channel where he looks at movies and their accuracy. He just did a 2-parter on Midway. Now, I had done an analysis of the movie Midway, the one that was made in 2019, and I'll give Roland Emmerich credit. I agree with Nick Hodges at History Buffs that this time at least Roland made an effort to tell the correct story, and he did put in some really interesting things that have been left out. But there were the one thing, and I realize he's not an airplane guy, so it's easy to confuse. The United States Army Air Corps was there. They had 4 B-26s and I think 15 B-17s, one of which was destroyed on the ground. All 4 of the B-26s attacked with torpedoes. 2 were from a reconnaissance squadron, 2 were from a bombing squadron. 2 of them were shot down, 2 of them limped back. The ones that came back were written off after landing. They were shot to pieces. Murray and Collins, I believe, were the 2 surviving pilots. Mays and Watson were both shot down. Now, they keep calling them B-17s. They keep calling in the movie. They keep calling the B-26s B-17s, and I realize it's just a small technical glitch he made, but it as an airplane guy, I'm like, but the B-17s were at altitude, but the B-26s made torpedo runs, not bombing runs, and for some reason in that movie, they have like a dozen B-26s dropping bombs from altitude, and none of them making torpedo runs. Now, again, that's a technical, and it's not the end of the world, and I realize it's all CGI. But they did have a CGI B-17 landing, so someone had gone through the trouble to construct the CGI model. That would have been... It's also the Devastators, when they were attacking, they had the torpedo, but they also had a pair of 500-pound bombs hanging off the wings. And it's just not something that they did. And I don't understand why they felt they had to add that, because it didn't add anything to the movie. And by the way, they never used them either. They never dropped them. It didn't add anything to the movie. They had the wrong squadron attacking. Again, these are you really have to be into it to understand. But things would have been so easy to correct. I'm not sure why they rearranged. I guess they were trying to make the story flow and keep it under the time limit and stuff. But it's just a shame to see so much good work go into making this thing, only to turn around and make all these really avoidable wrongnesses. Which pilot flew down the deck on the jet carrier? Actually, 2 of them did. Gay swooped the Soryu and flew right down the deck after he dropped his torpedo. And he wasn't trying to show off, but he was just trying to keep from getting shot down. I think the D4Y Judy first saw... yes, it did. They had 2 of them. Now, these were the these were the inline models, not the later radial engine models. And these were the ones that were called... Actually, they called them Suzies. The Japanese had a lot of trouble getting their copy of the DB601 to work, so they started putting radial engines on them, and then they were called Judies. Same airframe, just a different engine. And they were used in the reconnaissance mode. And I'm not sure, but I think one of those was the airplane that had the bad transmitter. Nobody's really sure if they had 1 of them or 2 of them, but Midway was the debut of the aircraft in combat. The other pilot, to answer your question, that flew down the deck was James Murray in the B-26 after he dropped his torpedo. They had been told that the Japanese had no direct air cover. If you were right over the ship, they couldn't shoot at you. So he just decided to swoop the deck just to give a couple of seconds of not being shot at. And the Zeros did break off their attack when he was that close, and the ship's guns couldn't shoot at him. His men were strafing the deck, and according to Shattered Sword, they actually managed to kill a couple of Japanese sailors with their strafing run. Their torpedo missed. The airplane had a snot shot out of it. There's a couple of good paintings about it. But according to Collins, because I watched an interview with him, and Murray just passed not that long ago. I think he was in his 90s. Collins was saying that Mays and Watson apparently didn't keep a real tight formation. I mean, these guys were from different squadrons. They hadn't trained together or anything. And but when they popped out of the cloud, there was a whole Jap fleet. and they had like 7 or 9 Zeros in a combat air patrol go head to head with them, and they shot one of the B-29s down, I think on a head-on pass, and then attacked the others from the rear. I don't know if it was Watson or May's plane that got shot down attacking the carrier, and nobody knows to this day if they were just trying to make a suicide run or if the crew was already incapacitated or the controls were shot out. But it did go flying right past the bridge of Akagi, and it shook up Nagumo and his staff. I mean, they just couldn't believe that these guys were pressing the attack without fighter cover, and this is not what they were told to expect from the Americans. You know, the propaganda ends when the first bullet flies by your head. So it was George Gay and Jim Murray, both who flew down the. Gay flew down the deck of the Soryu, and Murray flew down the deck of, I think it was a Akagi. And I didn't miss anything, Stephen. We had computer technical difficulties, so we're actually kind of just getting ramped up. If I remember that. No, I don't want to beat up Roland Emmerich. I mean, the movie's a good movie, and even if you didn't know anything about the battle and you watch that movie, you'd have enough of an idea to have the history more or less right in your head. And they have to put in that kind of an action adventure to get butts in seats. It's still a movie. Okay, that makes sense. There was one destroyed on Soryu, the other side. Okay, here you went. All right, that's on the D4Ys. That makes sense. That's a funny thing is that. Okay, Chris. Well, thanks for everything. I appreciate you. Take care. I'm buffering. You're buffering. I don't know what you know what? Maybe I can reduce the workload on this a little bit. Yes, the B-26s did carry the torpedoes, and Murray had talked about he had never dropped a torpedo from his B-26. He had seen it. Okay, give you a little background on the B-26s at Midway. And there's one little website out there somewhere that's dedicated to this. Once they figured out, and Ernie King was convinced that Midway was the target, he let Nimitz have every asset that was available. A lot of people don't know there were 5 Stuart light tanks that had been shipped to Midway, along with I think it was a company or a battalion of Marine Raiders, because this 5 Stuart light tanks could really ruin the day on a landing party, popping away with machine guns, those little 37 millimeter cannons, little portable pillboxes. So they were throwing everything into Midway. That's why Midway was as prepared as it could be. You got to remember, this is 1942. We've been in the war 6 months. We are so far behind the power curve on production and weapons. A lot of this stuff is out of date. They ring the thing with 3-inch and 5-inch anti-aircraft guns. They even had some 7-inch guns, but those things have been in the pipeline before the war or before the battle began. But basically, Midway had the firepower of 3 destroyers and a cruiser. So it was armed to the teeth. But the B-26s, but the thing was, they had to keep a lid on it. They had to keep security. So a lot of guys didn't know what was going on. They just knew we were told to go to Midway and set up shop, prepare for invasion. Well, here you've got these B-26 pilots that happen to be in Hawaii waiting to go to, I think it was New Guinea. And all of a sudden they get orders. Listen, we're going to gas up your planes and you're going to go to Midway and wait. There's a possibility you might have to drop a torpedo. So we're going to show you how it's done. So the pilots and the crews are standing on this bay or whatever while a B-26 flies by and drops a torpedo. And they saw it just one time. Okay, that's your altitude, that's your speed. And the guy's like, okay, why are you teaching us this? Just, you might need to know. Get in your planes and go to Midway. They go to Midway. Then all of a sudden the guys put the torpedoes on the plane. Yeah, there's a chance there's going to be a Jap fleet out there somewhere and you're going to have to go shoot a torpedo at it. Like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you showed us out. Our, one pass of advanced training. Now, these were the B-26B models that are the short wings, the big spinners, and the real tiny carburetor inlets. And they were fast, though. They were really fast for a bomber. That was their weapon. So, and I remember the interview with Muri. And you got to remember, the Navy guys already kind of were clued into what was going on because being Navy men, they know the different types of ships. You know, they're nautical men. But the Air Force guys were trained to bomb land targets. They'd seen a torpedo dropped once. They don't know a cruiser from a battleship from a destroyer. And to them, the whole thing is, what's going on? So Muri said that about 3 a.m, they would rouse the pilots out of their bunks. Army, Navy, Air Force, everybody, go out to airplanes and warm up the engines because they knew if they got attacked, they had to get out in a hurry, and you got to let radial engines warm up for a while. So around 3 a.m, they go up, cranked in, blah, 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 blah. You have all these airplanes running their engines and everything just idling out there. And once the engines come up to okay, Edward, I'm glad you made it. Take care. So they all shut their engines down. The engines are warmed up. The oils are nice and heated up and thinned out and everything. Everything's ready. And also it's a chance for, run mag checks and everything. Make sure, just do a complete search. Yep, we're ready for combat. Guns loaded, gas, bombs, works. We're ready. So the aircraft are kind of in a locked and cocked position. Canopies open, ready to go. They all go crawling back to their bunks, and I don't know, it was an hour or two later, the alarm goes off. Now, this is when the Catalina flying boat, I think it was one flown by Lieutenant Addy, they'd spotted the Japanese fleet in at least 2 of the carriers. So, everybody, we went over the Japs are already come into the briefing. Now, here's where things go from, yay, the Japs are here, let's go get them, to holy crap, we've got to get off this island. Because remember, Midway had a radar installed not long before. And that gave them about I think it was a 90-mile search radius. Well, now that they knew where the Japanese were, they knew where the threat was coming from, that helped a lot, and they knew which way they had to go hit it. So they all go into a briefing room. Actually, I don't know if the actual codes were 85 Victor Victor 84. They had a 4-digit. I think it was 83 Victor Victor. I think the strawberry thing is something they made for the movie. Maybe that is what they used on them. Orange Tabby, glad you made it back. Hey, Danaflo. Hey, Anshalak, welcome back. Yeah, momentarily got my computer glitch moved up. Man, this thing locked up tight as a drum. So anyway, so the planes are warmed up and ready to go. The pilots are reasonably well rested. Everybody's so packed full of adrenaline and caffeine. So Muri says, they said, get to the briefing tent. The Japanese have been sighted. So he and the pilots and the navigators all go to the briefing tent. And he says, all there is like a chalkboard with thing says Midway. And then it says, okay, like 160 miles, 330 degrees, and a circle that said target. And he didn't know what it was. For all he knew, he said, for all I knew, it was a bloody freighter. And before they, and it was full of Navy and Marine aviators who were just doing nothing but, walking around with clipboards, drinking coffee. And I'm like, because that's what they do. Anyway, I'm glad you made a mop a moot. Sorry. So the guys all figure, okay, we're going to go out to our aircraft. We're going to have this coordinated attack, and Commodore Symington is trying to get everything, or Captain Symington's trying to get everything coordinated, and he wants them all to move out as an intact force. The problem is all these airplanes move at different airspeeds. The B-26 is the fastest thing. The Avengers are faster than the SBDs. The SBDs are faster than the Vindicators. And he wants all of his fighters to stay behind to defend the island, which they do. Unfortunately, they're mostly overweight, fairly poor condition Marine rooster buffaloes. And they weren't bad. I mean, it was just they were old and kind of worn out. But the Japanese did not have up-to-date surveillance. It's funny you should mention the Japanese surveillance. The Japanese reconnaissance. We had 32 Catalinas on these Victor Victor Airways out doing this fan search from the northeast to the southwest. The Japanese had 7 airplanes trying to cover an area the size of the state of Texas. One of them flew right over the fleet and didn't want to go down under the overcast or the undercast, so he never saw him. Flew right over him and never saw him. But everybody's sitting there, they're about to get their big briefing, and then the inbound Japanese bomber force, I think it was 102 aircraft, including the 2 command, control, and reconnaissance aircraft, the entire inbound Japanese attack force gets picked up on radar about 90 miles out. And when that happens, it's a pilots, man your planes. And it's a mad scramble. Just get them off the island. They had about 15 minutes where the Japanese were going to be there. And everybody's and one Catalina pilot who was outbound on his legs saw the Japanese attack force go by. He realized we have not got time for coded messages. He has his guy get on the radio, broadcast, and this they do show in the original movie Midway, and he's like, many planes headed Midway. And at this point, it's just a mad scramble. And then the radar picks them up, and not just a few minutes later. So everybody's like, we got to get the hell out of Dodge there. We're not getting caught on the ground. If I remember, the order was the Grumman Avengers took off first, then the B-26s. No, I'm sorry, the fighters took off first to go intercept the Japanese. So they got the fighters. I think it was 4 or 6 Wildcats and a couple of dozen Buffaloes. Then the Avengers take off, then the B-26s take off, then the SBDs take off, and then the Vindicators take off. And they actually kind of took off in the reverse order they should have if you wanted them to arrive at the same time, because the fastest planes were taking off first and the slowest planes last, so they wound up getting strung out. This actually had an accidental benefit to it that you couldn't plan. This is where we got lucky. So, a long story truncated down, the last of the American aircraft taking off actually see the Japanese inbound. But the Japanese are focused on Midway, so like, yeah, let the planes go. We need to hit the island, knock out the facilities. And they were unable to do that. One of the things the Americans did have going for them was we had some of the best gun directors and anti-aircraft guns of that era and time. And everything had been pre-sorted. The guns had been what they call pre-registered. And with the radar to help with the ranging and the rangefinders, we actually got off some pretty accurate anti-aircraft fire, and the Japanese had to fly through a wall of anti-aircraft fire. And they lost 22% of their attack force on the first attack. You cannot sustain those kinds of losses. And they knew they were going to have to come back and do it again later on. Like, man, we lost 22% last time. We lose another 20%. We're going to pretty soon be an ineffective fighting force. Because you have to remember, it doesn't matter how many aircraft carriers you have. You don't have the airplanes to put on them. There's a lot more to the battle, but that's kind of how that unwound. Well, when the B-26s took off, they just hit their cruise speed, which is about 220, which is way faster than everything except the Avengers. So they weren't really able to catch up to the Avengers, which, by the way, the TBFs weren't called Avengers back then. They were just called TBFs. They got the name Avenger after the Battle of Midway because of the Battle of Midway. But the 6 Avengers show up without any fighter escort, and they got pummeled, and only one got off his torpedo. Yeah, that would have been a very different battle. Well, actually, it wouldn't have been that different. They would have still sunk all 4 Japanese carriers. Just might have saved the Yorktown. But the as soon as the Avengers were done, the B-26s came in. And as soon as they were done, the SBDs came in. It is true they were glide bombing, but they weren't only glide bombing because they were inexperienced. They were also glide bombing because the ceiling at the time was only 4,000 feet because of an overcast, so they couldn't get high. And then, but the weather was getting better as the day went by, which would facilitate the dive bombers later. And the Henderson, who was the commander of the Marine Corps dive bombing squadron, Lofton Henderson, who Henderson Field in Guadalcanal later be named after, his plane was hit and caught fire, and he stayed on his bomb run and until the airplane just disappeared into a cloud. No one saw what happened after that. The Sarah Jane, I'll tell you right now, although there are cultural issues with turning around, the Japanese Empire did not look kindly upon that. But militarily speaking, Japanese could have turned around, gone home, said, let's go rethink this, and they could have saved their assets. They could have saved one of the carriers, but after the first 3 carriers were hit, Tameron Yamaguchi, who was one of their more aggressive admirals, he kind of didn't know what to do now. I was like, well, now what do I do? And he was sending his planes out, but he just sort of tagged along with the Japanese fleet, and they were all kind of figuring out what to do next. Now, you got to remember, They thought they had sunk Yorktown. So when they went back and hit it a second time, there was no smoke coming out of it. It was steaming along. They patched the deck. They were launching aircraft. So the Japanese thought they were hitting Enterprise. So they thought it was a 1-to-1 battle. They thought it was just Hornet versus Hiryu. They didn't realize it was still a 2-to-1 battle. And that was, when you look at the decisions that Nagumo made, given the information he had, they were not poorly thought out decisions. They were rational decisions that made a lot of sense. But the situation changed faster than he could adapt to it. They knew that the Americans had 3 carriers once they caught Wesley Osmos from Torpedo 3. Maybe Gaido and O'Flaherty. Those are the 3 POWs they fished out of the water. Arashi, when it was steaming back to the fleet, picked up Gaido and O'Flaherty. And they got Osmos. He was about 2,500 feet, just starting his dive to get down to torpedo altitude when he got shot down. And his gunner was killed. He was able to successfully parachute out, but they saw the parachute and they sent a destroyer to go fish him out. Not because they were interested in saving his life. They wanted to extract information. And Nimitz is convinced that he was, although the Japanese never admitted to it, that the things that Nimitz thinks the Japanese did to him to get him to talk, I will not repeat here. But he confirmed that there were 3 carriers. And they kind of already knew it at that point. It was just confirming what they already knew. They knew there were 3 carriers when 3 torpedo squadrons showed up. They're like, there's 1 torpedo squadron on each American ship. There have to be 3 carriers. And they didn't understand it, but they knew it had to be happening. And, of course, this is all happening in real time. The irony is that Yamaguchi could have hung back from Kido Butai, launched his fighters, because Japanese fighters and bombers had such long range on them, and stayed out of the range of American aircraft. But there were a lot of misreporting positions. Remember, this is all whiz wheel. This is all, sun position, and I've been flying this long, dead reckoning, and do the math, not, and I should be here. Well, actually, I'm here. Being 60 miles off in those days, that's a lot of off. And by the way, when they nailed Hiryu, they didn't even send any fighters. They left the fighters to defend the ships. And they did run into fighter opposition. In fact, Weber, who had been with Dick Best, you guys might remember, everybody dove on Kaga by mistake, kind of forgot their training. And that's when Dick Best is like, hey, we're all going for the same carrier. Somebody's got to go get that other. So he takes his 3-plane element and goes and hits Akagi with what had to be the single best placed bomb of the entire battle, and probably the single most critical. And there were only 3 planes that did that. We're all 2 squadrons are nailing the crap out of Kaga. Only 3 planes went after Akagi, and they killed it. And 1 bomb hit by the rudder. According to the Japanese, it actually went through the safety netting into the water and exploded by the rudder and jammed the rudder, which was important. The other bomb hit in the water and missed. And Dick Best bomb pinwheeled right in the upper hangar in the center where the bomber Kankaboo was fully fueled and armed. All that ordnance landed and kaboom. And then, of course, their own ordnance chain reactions. And the reason that damage to the rudder was so important was the ship was going in, like the Bismarck, it was going in an uncontrollable circle. And that meant it was just barbecuing the ship. The fire kept changing direct, and they'd blown out. And not only had he hit all this ordnance, but the explosions had knocked out the water main, so they couldn't fight the fire. And the fact the ship was just steaming in circles, it was just barbecuing the ship like a rotisserie. That probably the single luckiest break for the Americans in the entire war. And Dick Best can rightly pat himself on the back his whole life as, yeah, I was the best bomber pilot in the Navy. And it's hard to deny that him and Dusty Kleiss, I think, are the only 2 guys that ever both bombed 2 carriers in the same day and made hits. And dive bombing, go play a game like IL-42 or World of Warships, one of those. And when you get in the cockpit and you realize how hard it is. The ship looks big, but when you're diving on it from an airplane, buffeting, being shot at, trying to keep the coordinator needle centered and the needle and ball centered, and keep that thing in the crosshairs. And remember, it's moving, so you got to think about where it's probably turning. So you got to think about where it's going to be, not where it's at. It's a miracle. And the Japanese were much better than us. They had a much higher hit rate. I think they had like a 17% hit rate, and we had like a 4% hit rate. But it worked. We made it work. In the end, that's all that matters. And yeah, I don't blame them. But there's a misunderstanding that people have, is that, like, the Coral Sea. If you ever look at the Coral Sea, that was an unholy mess. That was airplanes grope around in cloudy skies, the two fleets trying to find each other. And the fact that they found each other and inflicted damage on each other is a small miracle in its own right. In fact, the two air groups passed each other in flight. But it was total guesswork. All we knew is they're going to be somewhere in the Coral Sea. They're probably going for Port Moresby. That's about all we knew. And the part that's really amazing about Coral Sea, one could argue Midway never should have happened, because you get Coral Sea, then the Doolittle raid, which triggers the approval for the Midway operation. And the Japanese response to the Doolittle raid was way overblown. You guys know you'll never find a bigger Jimmy Doolittle fan than myself. But that raid was about hopefully triggering the Japanese to pull some sources home, which they did. And, boosting American morale, which it did. It accomplished its mission objectives, although probably arguably 250,000 Chinese paid the price for it. The Japanese overreacted way more than we expected. We didn't, I think it was probably after the war before we realized how much they had overreacted to it. This was, for all practical purposes, a pinprick raid, but it was on the homeland. And I can understand, but this is where the whole cultural thing comes into play. They had so much loss of face that they just overcompensated. And this led to a series of bad high-level decisions from the general staff. And it was, in one of their war games, and this is the part that's really hard to believe, and the Japanese are pretty good war gamers, but in one of their war games, some young lieutenant or ensign was playing the Americans. Because you always get the junior guy with no, less experience to go up against the admiral. So goes, we'll beat him easy. And he outfoxed him. And he said, I could attack your carriers while you're up on the island because I decided to put my ships out here to the northeast instead of off Midway. And their war game showed that he sank 3 carriers, which is exactly what happened in reality. And the admiral's response was, no, there's no way the Americans will be there. We order you. Your planes have to take off from Midway. Your ships have to be out of Pearl Harbor. I'm like, reality doesn't care about your war game. The guy showed them a scenario and they just didn't like it, so they ignored it. And, oh well, take a horse of water, can't make it drink. I can obviously prattle on about this all day long. Let's get on to some other things. You guys have sent me, in fact, Chris sent me a bunch of kits, and he said these make good road builds, and I thought I'd show you the little road kit I'm putting together. And I actually have these right here beside me. And this is my little road build kit. And what I take with me, usually very basic stuff, little thin cement, some clamps, tweezers, clippers, and the models. I don't take paint or anything because I don't have any way to, I could only use a paintbrush, and I wouldn't be able to use a spray gun. But at some point I need to make myself like a little fishing box with all this stuff in it and tote it separately. But right now it just goes in a box. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is when I have to select what kits I'm going to take, these are the kinds of models I would generally take for road builds. Those little World War I biplanes got a little busted up being transported back, as careful as I was. So usually monoplanes or very small models. A Polikarpov's a 1-144. So it's small enough I should be able to transport it without any damage. But monoplanes, jets, things like that make better road builds just because once you start getting them put together, they, generally speaking, are easier to transport without damaging. Hey, John, glad you're back. And these 6 are kind of the ones I I have a couple others also, but these are the ones I'm pretty much planning on taking on the. I'm not going to take them all at one time, but I'll take 2 or 3 of them on each trip, and relatively easy to build. Got a little. I do have some. I do have some sandpaper in there also to help sand it down and the little snippers and everything. But those are the kinds of kits that should be pretty easy. And at some point, I might start carrying a couple of paints with me. But they're smaller in scale. The props, of course, will be transported separately. And if I decide to make them wheels down, that'll be. I'll assemble landing gears and maybe just tag them in place for some pictures. But I won't. I won't try to. Probably won't try to transport them with the gear down. And the other thing some folks had asked about. This came from Chris also. And this is interesting because this has the original tape and everything. If you guys remember Mike Machat's channel, this is a 60s vintage kit. And I don't believe a single Messerschmitt could survive that many bullet holes in the cowling and still be flying away. But here we have a original Hawk kit. I thought about taking it on the road, but I'm not sure I want to build it because it's an old kit. And judge by it's got a $5 sticker on the bottom and a $4 sticker on the side. I'm guessing this changed hands. So either went flea market or changed hands somehow at the shop. Because if you notice, it says $4 on the side, but on the back it says $5. So I'm guessing, I don't know which is the older price, but I kind of like the idea of keeping that kit for a while just because it's an older kit. And it got me wondering about what old kits do I have. And I had been asked recently about the oldest kits I have. And I think, I went picking through, I think these are the oldest kits. Now the Helldiver is a UPC kit, which means it's a repop, probably of a Morrison. But the, and ironically, these would all make good little road, except for the Deperducin, these would all make good road build kits. Except the Junkers, it would be a little too big. But the 5 planes on the bottom would all make good road build kits. But I think I might hang on to them for just a little while because in the boxes, because they're pretty old, and ones like that Morrison, or I believe Mr. Hamilton sent that to me. That's it's kind of a rare kit in that off scale, but I will build them. If I get it, I'm going to build it. I can't not. It's in me blood. One other old kit that I have, if you guys remember, this B-26 that says Airlines. This is actually a Frog kit, but they came up with the Airlines for a couple of years to sell them in France because obviously a kit named Frog wasn't going to be terribly popular in France. In fact, might even be considered a little offensive. It's and I have built some Frog kits, and they're okay. But that's another one that part of me kind of wants to keep it just the way it is, just because you don't see a lot of those around anymore. Yeah, awkward. The roof is a nice kit. I actually have that exact kit that I've already built on the shelf in the I think I painted it in the olive drab color, the green. So I'm going to do this one in the gray color like you see it on the box top, and that'll give me a match set, so to speak. Also, amongst the other things Chris sent me were the canopies, the squadron canopies. Oh, big news. Boy, I can't believe I almost forgot. And I actually wrote this down. I wrote down some things to talk to you guys about, and I haven't even used the script yet. Okay. Squadron is back. It was bought out, and apparently it's being revitalized. So Squadron Shop, I've been getting a couple emails on it. Looks like they may already be back in business, or they're going to be back in business soon. Remember, the reason for their bankruptcy was financial. The facility, I don't know if they're using the same facility or not, or just bought the name and the assets or what, but it's nice that they'll be back. I don't know if they'll be back full throttle or not. But anyway, Chris had also sent me these 2 canopies for these P40s, which will make a much nicer kit out of them. They're made for the monogram. And, he's like, don't lose them. And given it my organizational skills or lack thereof, I made sure the first thing I did was, oops, careful what button you click. First thing I did was put them in the box with the models. So now there's no way I'm going to lose those canopies. Well, the Anshalaki, if you're talking about the Helldiver, that's a UPC, not an MPC. That's not it. There we go. That Helldiver is a UPC kit. UPC, I don't think UPC ever used an original mold. Like Intex, who actually may have made 1 or 2 molds of their own. Like Intex, they only repopped other people's stuff. And although I'm not sure about that particular one, I know a lot of their stuff was the old Marasan stuff. But that was by no means the only one that they used. All right. They did move facilities? Okay. An Amazon market, that actually makes sense. That makes perfect sense because, the mail order, whole mail order thing. Just threw that together, kicks and giggles out of that beat up old, and I was like, man, that's a lot of USSS's on it, but you want to be able to identify each part once it's separate. I'm going to kind of hang them up like that, separate, like they've already separated them, hang around the space station, make like a mobile out of it, and hang that somewhere in the Tarbus. I'm even running out of space on the roof in that place. Oh, I actually have an NPC profile series, which is the old Airfix. You're right. On that, you're correct. Okay, you're talking about the profile series. No, you're absolutely correct about that. NPC did use Airfix kits for their profile series. Yes, I was thinking that UPC kit. See how easy it is to get confused on this stuff? And I have their DC-3 C47, which I think that one's in Pan Am markings. I have 2 DC-3s. One of them's the Airfix, which is in the military D-Day markings, and the other is the MPC, which is in Pan Am markings, and yes, they are the same kit. Intex kits, yeah. Yeah, I gotta admit, I kind of like the vinyl rubber band tracks from a simplicity point of view. Linking tracks is right up to that's next to rigging models, with and I don't think I took a picture, but I guess it doesn't matter. I picked a couple of models. Let me see. Did I take a picture of them? Let me just look real quick. Okay, let's see. I picked a couple of models, World War I models, because now that I'm kind of getting the rigging thing going here a little bit, I want to go ahead and do a couple of more basic World War I models. Did I take a picture of the two? No? Well, I sort of did. They're in the background right here. Actually, I already have this picture. Let's see where that's okay. You see underneath the 2 P40s these this OFAG. I also have that SE5 from Revell, which is one of the nice level 4 kits. I'm going to probably do a side-by-side comparison of those two, like build them at the same time, including rigging. And that'll be an opportunity for me to put some of my newfound skills to work. But I'll be more careful this time. Make sure I'll follow all the procedures I was talking about earlier. And good God, 1,200 of track pieces, Jesus. But that'll be a chance to put some of these techniques to work and make some real nice looking airplanes. But definitely gonna pre-paint as much as I can, make sure the holes are drilled, and I got to order some gas patch. I'm waiting on my Easy line to show up. I ordered a batch of that. I also found out that that 2-pound fishing line that I had went right through those gas patch little holes in there, and I probably could have used that, but didn't. But the problem with that stuff is that to get it to actually sit straight, you got to apply a reasonable amount of pressure to it. And although it has a little elasticity, that's a lot more pressure on a plastic model than Easy line would require. But it did go through the turnbuckles, so there's that. Has there ever been a video by scale modelers on a kit company to avoid? Oh, yeah. I think we've actually covered, we did 1 or 2 videos. I've asked people about their worst kits or companies to stay away from. You guys can start lighting up the comment section, because I know there are a couple of companies you all know to stay away from. Now, the Novo kits that I built weren't that bad, but the later Novo kits apparently were a little train wreck. And some people, to be honest, would say you stay away from Lindbergh and a few others. No, I'm not. I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm not in. I have failed to join IPMS for no specific reason. I just haven't. It's just one of those things I never got around to. I think I told you guys that my wife and I bought investment property, and the home inspector is a local IPMS chapter president, and he is or was, and he had actually he'd seen the show a couple of times. Hey, you do that YouTube video? Oh wow, I really need to get back up with him. Yeah, I've heard some iffy stuff about Smear. I've got one of their kits that that actually might not make a bad road build. I got to be honest though, that KP, which the kit, that little lag, nothing wrong with that. No, that's a neat little kit, and it. Let's see, did I think I took a picture of it just out there on the. I really don't have any complaints with that KP kit. So it's not the part of the world that it comes from. I mean, I'm sure that has something to do with it, but there's the lag. That's a 1/72nd scale lag from KP. It was as good as a, monogram kit, or on par with an Airfix, or close enough to it that, maybe not quite as good as Airfix, but close enough. I'll tell you who makes kits that I have found, and that Stuka, that little 1/72nd scale Stuka that I posed the TDs on, Academy. I've actually been impressed with a lot of their models. PM models from Turkey. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, I grew up with Lindbergh. It used to irritate me to get these big, the box get these big boxes. I open them, there's this tiny little model inside. Actually, some of the Lindbergh kits were really good. Their SE5 and their Stearman were really good. And later Lindbergh kits, especially after it was taken over by oh gosh, the guy who invented side slide. How can his name be escaping me right now? But he their car kits went up to be really, really good ones. That Polara I built was a let me just clear this out. That Polara I built was a Lindbergh kit, and it's a really good model. I'm very, very, very happy with it. And but a lot of the old Lindbergh kits were, pretty iffy. One of them that's still made today because it's so big is that Blue Devil Destroyer, and you look at it, especially because it's large scale, it shows more. There are accessorizing kits you can make a nice kit out of that, but you actually look at the kit, it ain't that. A lot of guys make it to RCs because they're so big, but it really ain't that good looking a kit. I thought about getting one, put it on the shelf, and I saw one. I was like, oh, almost looks more like a toy. Yeah, I got to be honest. I'd heard some people, oh, Academy this, Academy that. You know, they're out of Korea and blah 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 blah. And somebody gifted me that shtick, and I built it. There's nothing wrong with this. It's incredible. It's one of the most detailed 1/72 scale models I've ever built. Everything fit like a glove. The decals are good. And it made a nice looking model. Let me see if I can find a picture of that just real quick. George Totiff, that's who I was trying to remember. Who he was the one that took over Lindbergh and really, really made some good kits. And those are the ones that are fortunately the ones that are being repopped largely by round two, luckily. And let's see, I don't think I have any pictures on this computer. Since I got the new computer, I've transferred a lot of the images over, but and stuff, but a lot of it's still. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Gosh, I got that Cohen song stuck in my head ever since I did that thing with the Felix Stowe over there. And let's see. I did Advent. I still got to do Dragon and Panda New Zealand for kit histories. I still got. Can't take too much focus off of those. I need to remember to get some more of those cranked out. There's just so much going on. I can't find it. Maybe I haven't transferred those pictures over yet. Okay, what am I looking for? Yeah, they do, but Lindbergh, Paul Lindbergh, he made. You have to remember the different model companies have different audiences also. You know, if you're going to give a young kid a kit or something, Lindbergh was fine. You're going to give a serious model builder something, you know, you're talking about Monogram or Tamiya or something like that. um, and look, to be honest, sometimes companies even like Revell and Aurora would get if they didn't. If Aurora was famous for just they would see a picture in a magazine, they would just guess the dimensions and make it, but they were almost always the first to market. And it's a business. And Abe Shikes, he was like, "We're running a business. We're a plastic injections business. I want to." And Giammarino was the one who really wanted to make good kits, and they did make a lot of good kits, but they also made a lot of subject matter nobody else did. But um, I don't know. Monogram was almost too conservative for their own good. They made great kits. They were financially in the black, but they were so worried in the late '60s about where modeling was going that they were the ones that basically sought out Mattel, and they thought it was going to be good for the longevity of the business. But the toy business and the model business are not the same thing, and that kind of came back to haunt them when the handlers, pardon the pun, got their hands on the company. And well, there were issues there. We all know about the whole stock thing and everything else, and I don't know how much of it they really understood what they were doing, but they got in big trouble, and Monogram just got caught in the crossfire. But still, even though the names pretty much disappeared, the kits are still around. You still get a Revell kit. It says Monogram stamped on the bottom, and it's a name, but the product is still out there. That's the important thing. And actually, they've gotten better. They even box them better than they used to. Although my understanding is the current Revell is only 6 or 7 people. Everything's popped in China and boxed and everything. And I don't know if they box them when they get them over here, if they box them over there. But generally speaking, though, if the few Revell of the current Revell, which like I said, it's Monogram kits I've built, I found for what you're paying for them compared to what you spent for to me, that's not a bad deal. And there's a 1/48 scale Fiesler Stork at the hobby shop right up here, and it's like $54. You know, that model's going to be that big when you're done with it, right? And I'm like, you know, I know Tamiya makes a great product, and it's a new mold, and they have to get it paid for and everything, but I don't know if anybody else makes a 1/48 scale Fiesler Stork, but given my skill and abilities, I'm like, you know what, I'd be happy with an Airfix or something like that. Yep, yep, they did. And I think Atlantis is repopping that now, the Snoopy game, the ice hockey. I remember Pete Vetri, I think, was talking about that, but I think it's Atlantis that's redoing it. And I get caught up on these legal hassles. You know, you want to repop a kit, and if it's a licensed property like Star Wars or Peanuts or something like that, it just becomes, you know, I mean, these guys are spending as much time probably having meetings with lawyers as they are, you know, running their companies. And last I saw on the Williams website, which hasn't been the Williams Brothers website, which hasn't been updated recently, Bread Industries had bought them out and still has the molds and has the press and everything. But apparently he was having trouble finding styrene. And I don't mean that it had gotten expired for a price. Apparently it's just, again, with COVID and everybody, you know, laying back, there just isn't any to be had. And I imagine these bigger companies are buying it by the container shipload, so they're getting the bulk of it. And House Hobby's going out? No, not that I know of. Max, can you mention House of Hobbies going out? Okay, I can mention House of Hobbies is going out, you're saying? Or is that a question, is it going out? And I agree, Slugo. A model's a piece of art and a toy is something you play with. And I played with enough models, but the way I built them, they were not pieces of art. Yeah, the Roco miniature tanks, yeah. Those things have gotten expensive. There's a shortage of polymers and resins right now. Okay. Squadron, like you said, was opening under new ownership, which apparently is a new facility and is being done. I believe you said it was an Amazon shop type person that's doing it, which, like I say, makes sense because it's mostly mail order. You know, I agree. It would be nice to see some more between the Wars aircraft, and I've been very fortunate. You guys have sent me these racing planes. I got the P-35, I got a Beech 18, a Stagger Wing. Um, there's an elegance to the aircraft of the 30s. That's right. In fact, Garfield's talking about the Revell kits. The way I understand it, and I don't know if I think I put this in one of the videos a while back. There's basically two Revells. There's Revell in the U.S. and there's Revell Germany. And the Revell Germany stuff is mostly popped in Poland, or it was, and maybe the Czech Republic. And the stuff sold in the U.S. was largely popped in China. I don't know how much crossover there is. Maybe they're all doing everything. They seem to be somewhat independent companies, although I would imagine Revell USA, it's somehow, the company's changed hands so many times. And a lot of times the molds stay in the same place. You know, these companies will change hand, the molds never move. If the molds are in China, like Wingnut Wings, their stuff was pressed in China, was shot in China. Well, the new people that bought, I think it was Meng, bought the molds. They don't need to move the molds. They can just have the same company keep cranking them out under a new box. But someone also said that they have not repopped the Wingnut Wings. What they did was they used their patterns to make their own molds. I don't know if that's correct or not. Obviously, these companies don't divulge this because these are internal business dealings and they don't want the world to know what they're up to. It's please buy the product, don't worry how we make it. And so I get different information and snoop around. You read stuff, but you can't guarantee that it's accurate. I do believe Revell Germany is running Revell USA. I think Revell USA is a subsidiary, but I think it's a U.S. company that, for I would imagine tax reasons. But again, You call them up and ask, they're not going to answer questions like that. They're corporate. Hey, Burning Bee. Their internal corporate workings, and a lot of this also exists on paper too. For example, well, I agree, it is when it made its advancements, or most of them. I think what happens is, you have a company that buys another company, but nothing fundamentally changes. It's just, I'll give you an example you guys could probably relate to. My hometown airport, there was a little Piper Colt, little tricycle gear, 2-seat Piper. And it belonged to a fellow who wanted to get out from under it. So 3 guys bought it. And I wanted to own an airplane, so one of them wanted out of the partnership after a year or two, so I bought his partnership. So I was a third owner in the airplane. And then the other 2 owners wanted out of it, and I didn't have the money to buy the whole thing. But a friend of mine did, and he wanted it, so we sold it to him. Okay, this whole time, the airplane stayed in the exact same hangar. Never moved. It was just a matter of who owned it on paper. In fact, it was basically the same people flying it. It was just ownership was changing hands, but the airplane was physically in the same location, the exact same hangar, the exact same N number. Nothing changed on it other than which one of the carbon-based life forms, claimed the human concept of property rights on it. That was the only thing that changed. And this happens with a lot of these companies. The machinery, the people operating it, all this stuff, it's all exactly the same. It's just somebody up at a corporate level. Hey, we're selling this subsidiary to this company, and it changes hands, so that tells you where the money goes. But outside of that, fundamentally, from an actual user endpoint, nothing's changed. So that happened. Now, in the case of Atlantis, that's not the case. They've actually are developing the ability to pop their own kits, and they box them themselves. So when they buy molds, they come to them. They actually get the asset, move it, and make changes to it and update it. So they actually are making material changes. So it varies with who. And I'll tell you what, Pete and Rick work their backsides off keeping that kind of company going. This is not, guys up in the, in a boardroom smoking cigars and, manipulating millions of minions. This is 2 guys that bust their ass to keep a small company afloat making this stuff. And the same for Rick Glencoe, and Nick's over there working very hard, and he also has another company that he has to run. So the fact that they keep these things going, it's just I guess you call it a labor of love, but it's still a labor. Make no mistake about that. Somebody asked me, I did ask about the Borg minis and the turrets, so I got those right. Somebody asked me about putting canopies on. I know a lot of people use white glue, and I personally soak the things in wax, floor wax, just to let it harden, so that keeps them from fogging. But I also had a couple people say that the Gorilla Glue does a real good job of mounting canopies without fogging them up. I have not used it myself. Yeah. Didn't somebody else put out a 1/32 scale Mossy? To me or somebody? It seems like a really expensive one came out. Yeah, they do. I was thinking that Walker Bulldog that I bought that I still haven't built. Okay, don't get sidetracked. It was a Tamiya kit. It was like $18, and I was kind of like, why is this $18? But here's this same scale Panzer for $50, and it's simple. That mold's 40 years old, and this mold's brand new, and they got to pay for it. I don't know. I know that Nick still makes kits for bulk sales, but I actually don't know. I rarely see a Glencoe kit on the shelf anymore, and unfortunately, I actually talked to the local mom and pop hobby shop, Hurricane Hobbies, about, you guys don't have any Glencoe kits. Apparently, their distributors don't carry them. So that's a good question. I should ask Nick about that. In fact, let me make a note about that. Ask Nick Argento where to get new Glencoe kits. By the way, did anybody here completely, and now to paraphrase Monty Python for something completely different, has anybody ever here, okay, let's try this one more time. Does anybody here remember a Milton Bradley board game called Dogfight? Okay, where to put it? Ah, here we go. That's it. Any of you guys remember this game? My brother and I used to get this for Christmas just so we could play with the little airplane parts that came inside it. Okay. All right. Why am I not shocked that I'm getting a string of yeses here? Oh, John Ashley Smith, I'm glad you could make it, man. Yeah, you have a great day. Oh. Yeah, you get a little more. Exactly. I think I'm going to have to pick one. I might have to buy a couple of those used on eBay, send one to my brother. Yes, he is not burning. I used to when I was a kid, I'd look at that and go, man, got the wretched Hun. Hey, I hope he's got a parachute. Well, John Kitt and I had a chat last night on Zoom, and we were talking about this game, and he brought up an interesting point. I wonder who did the box art, because it really does look like Kitt model box art. I don't know if Milton Bradley had their own people, or if they went to one of the box art guys. And but the Newports definitely get the advantage of the albatross there, and this reminds me. You guys have probably all seen this. Fishing above. That's what I was just asking. Is does anybody know who did that box art? I might have to look into that. Yeah, yeah, me too. The exact same thing. When we got trying to play the game, we just grabbed the little airplanes. Create your own game with Aurora Kit. Oh, Dogfight 148 scale. Get a big table. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to know where I'm going with this, but when I see this picture, for some reason, I keep thinking of that part of Black Adder where Baldric, the First World War, when Baldric's asking him how the war began, and how, they got to be at what point there was a war, or there wasn't a war, and now there is, and I was wondering what brought about the change of state of affairs. You mean, how did the war begin, Baldric? And but Hugh Laurie's character, stop the vile Hun and his imperialistic attitudes, and he's like, he says, no, Georgia. It's like, the British Empire currently covers a quarter of the globe. The German Empire is a sausage factory in Tanganyika. I don't think we can take the high ground on the imperial front. And I saw about some guy named Archie Duke shot an ostrich. Anyway, I'm sure you guys have seen the skit. If you haven't, it is freaking hilarious. But he just goes into this amazing logic about the super PACs, and and how us and the Russians, these two super PACs that keep each other at bay, and only one problem, it was bollocks. And I just what year was that game? It had to come out in the 60s, because I remember having it as a kid. It may have even come out before that. You guys probably remember the game. It's it doesn't have any shaped pieces, just has a little square pieces of cardboard with it. Is it Panzerkrieg or something like that? But it's a board game. There's little pieces, little square pieces, and you roll the dice, and you have infantry, and it's unbelievably detailed. And we actually played a game where both of us won. A buddy of mine brought it, and we played a game where we both won, because I was the Russians and he was the Germans, if I remember correctly. And the way it dealt was I had mostly infantry, but Panzer Blitz. That's it. Thank you. And what happened was his job was to delay me a certain amount of time, and my job was to break his defenses and push him back to a certain point. Both of us accomplished our missions. He delayed me the amount of time I was supposed to, but I took the objective I was supposed to take. I think it's Panzer Blitz. That seems to ring a bell. Faulty Towers. Basil Faulty. Oh, yeah. You started it. We did not. Yes, you did. When you invaded Poland. Stop talking about Savon. Yeah, some of these games, I know some guys that take them very, very seriously. You border on actually wargaming, like in the real military. Avalon Hill, yes, I've heard about their games. Okay. All these things are ringing bells. 1963 on it. Yeah, well, the game stayed in print for a long time, so I'm not surprised. And although I don't know who did that artwork, it has that sort of not a Dick Cashady feel to it. Maybe a Linwood feel. It's hard to say. My guess, I don't know. You know, I'm gonna have to see if. Hold on just a second. Let's see if the great knower of all things. What the heck? We'll just do this in real time. Artist who did dog fight for Milton Bradley. Let's see. A whole bunch of stuff about the game and what's for sale. Vintage American TV board game 99. Okay, helps if I spelled dogfight correctly. Let's just put dogfight box top for Milton. I doubt we're gonna. Okay, it looks like it started in 61. The first run went from 61 to 65. So it was American Heritage Series games of the Command Decision series of war games published by Milton Bradley from 61 to 65. Bradley Large Box Edition in 63. And I remember one of them that we got came with an amazingly detailed book. Like Tung Allied fighters approaching, will you send off your ace or rookie pilot? Made for ages 10 and up. Because we are from a generation where you taught 10-year-olds the art of war. Oh, I forgot they had anti-aircraft guns that reach home squadron, too. Okay. Apparently Hasbro picked it up at some point. Okay. Yep, there's a map of the front and everything. Wow, there's a lot of information about this game. I didn't realize quite how popular it was. And there's a whole bunch of different series, the same basic artwork, but different box tops. One of them has it on a 5-star American flag and a bunch of other stuff. Oh, look at this. Okay, let's see. Now, I'm not saying that he did this because I don't see a signature on it. But when I put up the dogfight artwork, some of Jack Linwood's artwork popped up, I think. Wait, that's not Linwood. That's some World War II artwork. I think it's just coincidental. Let's see. There it is. Skirmish, Battle Cry, Dogfight, and Broadside. All by Milton Bradley. this. Here we go. I had to download that for a second. Now I can show it to you. Image. Okay. Go over here to live streams 21. There. Okay, here we go. There are the 4 games you guys were talking about. Skirmish, broadside, battle cry, and dogfight. Well, it's nice to know that, you know, there was a lot of history to be learned in these games as well as in building models. I remember the booklets that would come with them, and they were, you know, it's funny. You tell a kid to study history in school, it's virtually impossible. Make a game out of it, and they can't get enough of it. I'm not sure we weren't teaching kids the wrong way. There you go, Burning Bee. You got your SPAD is calling you. Jacques Lepli. I gather she's not. I seem to have heard of the 12 o'clock game. I don't know if... Oh, Mike, you're here. Great. Oh, okay. Is it? All right. All right. So let me go back to the... Let's blow this up a little bit. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there's the name of the artist. Okay. I think it's some reason I wanted it to be Jack Linwood just because I love his art. Or Dick Cashady. Okay. Cover painting Bishop of Canada by Charles H. Hubble. Oh. I guess this is before he got into making space telescopes. Well, there we go. Now we see. We learn things here. By the way, guys, I saw that Mike Machat's Celebrating Aviation. Mike Machat, he has a new video up, which I meant to watch this morning, but I got sidetracked. That's the first thing I'm going to do, Mike, when we're done here, is go watch your new video. That does definitely have a kit model box art feel. In fact, you know, I think there's a marketing opportunity here for somebody that's making World War I aircraft. Use that box art on a 2-kit package with an Albatross and a Newport, and people probably won't even know why they want to buy it, but I bet they buy it. Okay, now I have to probably grabbing at straws here, but I'm just going to look up artist Charles Hubble, see if he was an aviation guy or just did all Milton Bradley stuff. Okay, it looks like he's an aviation guy. Yeah, he's an aviation guy. He's also got some trains and stuff, but the best of Charles H. Hubble. Yeah, and a lot of early, you know, like we're talking the pre-World War I stuff up through the racing planes. A lot of biplanes. Oh, there's a jet. And so he does have some jets and World War II stuff, but the bulk of his work seems to be World War I type stuff. Oh, since here, I'm just going to grab this copy image. I was talking about the advances between early warplanes and everything. Here's a good little sample. Let me just paste, crop. Okay. Let's add this to here real quick. Now, that thing on the bottom left, the German airplane, looks like the Taube I was talking about. I'm not sure that's what it is, but that's what it looks like. But you compare it to the and I think that might be a farman chasing it down. But anyway, you look at these two aircraft on the left, which would have been circa 1914 to 1915, and these two aircraft on the right, I'm going to say would be about 1917, 1918. Only a couple of years of development between the two, but look at how much advancement you're seeing in just that very short period of time. And it just makes you appreciate how quickly the technology was advancing. And we haven't even gotten into the triplane and the Fokker D8. So that's what I was talking about earlier. It's just when we were talking about technology. And it looks like the guys on the bottom, if I'm not mistaken, I believe these guys are shooting each other with pistols and rifles, which would have been correct to the early dogfights. There was a TV show in England called Wings, I think was the name of it, about the early First World War, and they put an angled machine gun on the BE-2 so it could shoot around the prop. But they actually brought an officer up as an observer who was a big game hunter, and he brought his rifle with him to try and shoot at the Germans with. And it was definitely a somewhat more austere affair. Oh, Lord. And if you ask those guys, they would have been like, what? It's just what we do. Yeah. That is amazing. Great. Now I have another artist I have to research. Go live and play the game. Yes, I have heard they were throwing rocks and bricks at each other. And given the delicacy of those old airplanes, you could do some serious damage with one if you could manage to hit it. Yeah, the Wings series was a surprise. It was a very literate television show. I mean, given what they had to work with, and it dealt a little bit like the movie The Blue Max. It also dealt things like the social issues of the time. The man was an enlisted pilot, and at one point he finally becomes commissioned, and he's expected to suddenly start conducting himself differently because he's an officer now. Did Wingnut Wings do a Dogfight 2 model kit? Not that I'm aware of. They certainly may have, but I'm not sure. I think one reason I get so enchanted by the art is that, as a kid I used to doodle and draw pictures and sketch, but I lacked both the patience and skill to be an actual artist, and I'm just always impressed by there are certain concepts that I think it's the same reason I had some trouble with studying electronics is, as Mike was talking about, things like the warm tones and everything, and there's certain rules how to break certain planes, certain do's and don'ts, and a lot of that, even though I can recite the words to conceptualize it, if I'm painting a picture, sometimes it gets past me. But when I do photography, one of the things I always try to do when I have the time to set up a proper picture, one reason I like using the photo light box, it has that neutral gray background, so virtually everything shows clearly. One of the things I like is contrast, so you can see some of the details and edges without them being obscured. And that can be a tricky thing to accomplish. The nice thing about it is if you're an artist is you're creating your own world. So as Bob Ross used to say, it's your world. Of course, that guy could do better paint. Bob Ross could do a better paint job with a house paintbrush than I can do with paint by numbers. So I just really appreciate art. Let's see. Oh, this is in reference to a comment on the last video. I think it was the one from last night. First off, let me just relate that story. Chris from Ohio, he was here earlier, but he had to leave. And he said that he'd sent me some stuff, and it went. And you guys, if you saw the video, it went to the wrong address. And apparently he'd sent the stuff together, but somehow the post office had, I don't know what went on in the inner workings of the post office, but they'd slapped a postal label with the wrong address on one of the boxes, and they both went to the wrong place. So the guy calls me, somehow he found my number, and I went and got it. No harm, no foul. But but then he told me afterwards, after I'd done the video, about what happened. He said, "Oh, that envelope where the address had a letter in it. So go out to the recycle, rip the envelope off, get it out." Well, when I opened the door, and it's 11 o'clock at night now, when I opened the door to go outside, there's this box laying in. It must have showed up at 9 or 10 p.m. after dark, but like, and it's another box from Chris, and that's the one that has all those bases, these bases that were in it that I was showing you, and so that's why I decided to go on out to the shed and make another video at 1. And I made that like 1 in the morning. I wasn't really sleepy yet. I tend to go to bed really late or really early, depending on how you look at it. Oh yeah. So I made that late night video, and one of the things he had there was open this last, and he said something about, I forget what I don't have the letter here, but anyway, it was like, live specimen or something like that, open last. And I made the joke about, God, this better not be like a Godzilla egg or something. And somebody made the comment about it being squirrels. And he said he was thinking that old Ray Stevens, and they called him the Streak. Well, he had another one called, let's see, I wrote it down because the Mississippi Squirrel Revival. And so I went and I'd heard that song, but I'd forgotten about it. So I went and looked at it, and it's about a kid that grabs a squirrel, puts it in a box, shows his friend in church, but he gets away and starts running up people's dresses. And everybody freaks out and stuff. It's a funny song. You can go watch the video. The reason that resonated with me so well, and this is one of those things that's just too good not to share. When I was a kid, my dad was a big model builder as a kid. I've actually done a video on it, and we're talking back in the 30s, when it was all stick and tissue and plans and stuff. Well, also one of the things that happened was he had a pet as a little boy. He had a pet squirrel. Now my grandfather is an off the boat German, and the German word for squirrel is Eichhörnchen, and family friend of ours. I'm 12 years old or something like that. Family friend of ours finds this baby squirrel that's fallen out of the tree. Doesn't know what to do with it. My dad, I'm sure that he's where I get my nostalgia from. He decides we'll take it. He builds this cage for it, and a good 4 foot high in order so it could run around. And the squirrel grows up with us, and we'd close all the doors and let it run around the room. Eventually, go back in his cage, and we loved having the squirrel. But my mom, especially when we got him, he didn't have much fur on his tail, so he looked kind of like a rat. She was kind of freaked out by it. And there was something about her, I don't know why. Every time she came in the room, he would run up on her. He just thought she was a tree. And there are so many stories about this squirrel. But when I saw that in that video of the squirrel running up people's clothes and everything, I was like, oh my God, that's what our squirrel did. Oh, it was a riot. And so I don't know. I just felt I had to share that with you. It has nothing to do with models. But it was just hilarious. I thought it was, and we had domestic help, and we had forgotten to tell her the first day she came in. That squirrel shot up her dress, and she ran through the house screaming. Oh Lord, you can't buy memories like that. So anyway, you guys if you need a grin, go look up the Ray Stevens, the Mississippi Squirrel Revival. It is hilarious. But for me, I'm like, hey, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I made one more note here, something I want to ask you guys about. Let me get on my regular glasses. These little thin rim glasses I have are fixed for using the computer at 25 inches. Anything, so it's great. But if I try to read something, I have to switch my glasses. And this is your captain speaking. I pretty much see the runway. Point out mistakes. Oh yeah, point out mistakes. God, I cannot read my own handwriting. Should have been a doctor. I've had a lot of people catch mistakes I've made, and they're always very apologetic about telling me corrections. Don't don't be as shy. If you see that I put the wrong date or something, or I got something wrong, by all means, make a comment, blast me an email, whatever. I want to keep it. I take no offense to being corrected. A lot of the times I'm cranking these things out in a hurry, sometimes after having had a little too much caffeine. Big fingers, little keys, and I'm not the best proofreader, and that's assuming that I actually proofread. And oh yeah, there was one other thing, and I didn't put a link on it, but you can probably just go to YouTube. There's a guy that paints these beautiful World War I propellers, but for models, and he did a video, and he has a kit model video, but and all he does is lay a pen on its side and go around the perimeter of the prop and flip it over and do the same thing, and that gives him guidelines and just brown and beige and brownie weathers and everything. Amazing work. And I was like, man, now that will not be the case of the Felixstowe. I will be repainting the Felixstowe propellers because the Felixstowe was a float plane, seaplane. They actually put this heavy paint on them to help prepare. Apparently, I guess it was some kind of resin, or I don't know, it was resin or paint, but it was protect propellers. All the pictures I've seen, you do not see the wood grain in the propellers. They're clearly been painted, no doubt, to keep, because of all the salt water, keep it from eating away whatever was coating, the resins that were coating the wood. But a lot of the old World War airplanes are just, the propellers, they plank the wood together and glue it and resin it, and then they can shave the prop, and that's why it has these multi-tones to it. But given that propellers are really big on World War I aircraft, and they're a very prominent part of the look of the airplane, I think getting a good-looking propeller is extremely important to having a good-looking model. And I would dare say that's actually more important than rigging the model, because a lot of times you rig a model, people look at it as if doesn't really register that the model's rigged. I'll bet you if I took a couple of airplanes like Fokker D7 that doesn't have a lot of rigging on it, and put two models nicely made, put an ugly prop on a nicely rigged one, and a really good prop on the one that wasn't rigged, most people would say, oh, that one with the nice, without even realizing it, because the propeller's so prominent, they probably go, oh, that's a better looking model. Mark, I saw the Mark Rober video on the squirrels are smart. And Igerson made a surprisingly good pet. It's not like you train to do anything, but he wasn't scared of us. He would come up, we kind of pet him with our finger a little bit. So that was, oh yeah. Well, yeah, if you've seen Wings, you've probably seen Sharp. I really love the episode about Sharp's rifles and the rest of them. Men are dirty. Rifles are clean. Just reading a couple of the... You were living a Simpsons episode. Yeah, that's. I think that's the reason the Simpsons resonate with so many people. Stayed so popular. Aside from some clever humors, a lot of people. Oh yeah, I remember that. If those haven't seen the Mark Rober video, if you're going to watch, other than his porch pirate traps, which are kind of at a different level, he had to actually work with law enforcement with those. But his one on the stuff he did with the squirrels, it's impressive. You don't realize what a superhighway your back fence is at night. Put a night cam out there sometime. You see that's triggered when something goes by. See how much stuff's running around your lawn and around your fences at night. Oh, that's great, Kenna. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay. Oh gosh, did I have a Major Matt Mason and a kid, and how that was like my favorite thing outside of building models. Was Major Matt Mason, and I used to be upset because I didn't have all the space, the moon base, and all that other stuff. I had that thing until I literally just broke the wires in it, playing with it and everything, and I still got two squirrels or rats with great marketing. That is about what my mom said, John. She could never get past it. To her, it was just a rat, and what it was about her. I don't know if it was perfume or what, but she'd walk in the room and, he made a beat, and right up he went. And the neighbor kids had G.I. Joes when I was like 6, 7 years old, and we enjoyed the heck out of them. I don't know if I ever actually had one or not. I probably did, but I don't remember it. Hello, Keeble. getting back to, and I got them right here. Here's my little, whoops. Okay, nobody saw a thing. Here's my little road kit. I tell you what, I'll just go ahead and just let's see. Whoops. Can't share the, yeah, that's okay. The bed's made. Never mind the microphone hanging on screen. So these are the kits I've selected for road builds. What we were talking about earlier for transportability. The 747. Now I don't know if I'll put it in these colors or not. You know, as you know, I don't paint on the road. And this is by. And who is this by? Ah, it's got the color guide on back. Okay, let's. A little too much light there. There we go. I love it when boxes do that. They give you the schematic, you know, on one side and then picture on the other. And it. You know, let's just open this up and see what's here. And there we go. That's the whole kit and caboodle, literally. This is the perfect kind of thing for a road build because it's small enough that I'll be able to transport it back after it's built. And you don't have much else to do in your hotel room other than, you know, file all the parts down and sand everything. So it's kind of the perfect little cocoon. Keeps me out of the bars and out of the restaurants because obviously I have a propensity to eat too much. And see that now Matchbox did a good job, you know, nice artwork, again, nice design on back. Oh, who was it made? This is Crown. This kit's from Crown. Now this one, I've got a bunch of these already, and since I plan to redo my Midway thing, and we all know this is the old Hawk kit that Testors got, but to their credit, now this is kind of interesting. They put a picture of the model on front, which is honest. They give you the diagram on the paint scheme on back. What I would do personally, just me, and I know some companies do this, I would put artwork on the cover to sell it. Put this on the back and put the photo on the side panel. That way you've got an actual picture of the model, you see how it's supposed to be painted, and you have artwork to sell. That is, I know that's probably the most expensive way to go about it. So my road kit is my snippers, 2 of my clamps, 2 different grits of sandpaper, and the fast-setting ultra-thin glue. And about the only thing I won't do with the models is decal them or permanently attach the landing gear or prop, because I want to pull those, maybe in the Dauntless, maybe not the antennas either, because I want those off, make it easier to ship them. But that's the kind of, this is, I don't know if I'll take all 4 of these with me on the road. I'll probably take 2 on each trip. But that's, and put it all in a box that can hold everything together so I can put it in my bag without losing anything, and we're off to go fly the jets. All right, guys, that's all I got. What do you got? Hit me with it. What's da, 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 da. I know I aired it in one of my videos. I found an old G.I. Joe commercial or something, and they are toys from these companies. They had the mess kit and the I mean, it's all full size, the working belt-fed machine gun and all these other toys. And I'm kind of like, you know, you got a bunch of 9-year-olds out there, you know, preparing to invade a small island nation. And I'm thinking, you know, kind of makes me miss the Cold War. Well, being a captain helps. As long as you take a little bit of glue, you know, with you, you can get it through. I wouldn't take a big tube or anything. And airline crew have different regulations on carrying stuff like that. You'll notice there's no X-Acto knife in there or anything like that. No, Adam, it hasn't been canceled. I just Andy and I haven't gotten together to do anything. Actually, I should shoot him an email. He's got health issues and everything, so I have to, kind of do this when he's up for it. But I do need to contact him about doing another one, and because as far as I'm concerned, to paraphrase Galaxy Quest, the Aurora files, they're historical documents. Working on a cow, okay? Having built several horses and some cows and oxen for that Pioneer build, I can understand that. Oh, God. You can't do that. It's quick dry stuff. It'll stick to your lungs. Let's see. I have done some resin kits. In fact, this Tremulous I have up here is a resin kit from Fantastic Plastic. Alan Urey said it's his worst selling kit because he did it in 1/48 scale, and normally the kits are done. He does 1/72 scale, which are much more popular. I think I got that right. Oh, okay. Oh, God, Robot Chicken does hilarious spoofs of anything. Nothing will ever beat the Aluminum Falcon. Let's see. What's your opinion on the Matchbox BF-109? Well, since I just happen to have one here, let's just open it up and take a look. And in Matchbox tradition, 2 different colors. Going to turn a light on here, it might get bright. As is typical of Matchbox, fairly deeply recessed details, but not bad. I don't see anything wrong with it. There's the decal sheet, reasonable amount of detail. Whoa, okay, feed the carpet monster and live on the interweb. Nobody move. It was a clear part. We'll crush that puppy for sure. The propeller. Oh, wait a minute. There's a vacuform canopy in here. Well, that's interesting. I don't recall Matchbox having vac canopies. This must be... Somebody might have added this. Oh, look, a sales receipt. I don't... Dean's Hobby Shop. Owasso. Oh, this is from Chris. Okay. Same one who sent me the stands were the bases we're looking at right now. So Chris put a vac canopy in there. Well, then maybe losing that other one is karma. Let's see. Hang on a second, guys. If you hear a small cracking sound, you know I moved the chair the wrong direction. Whoa! Hold still. This show always stays entertaining, huh? Maybe I should take my shoes off. Looking for clear parts in the carpet in real time. This show is nothing if not exciting, huh? Scintillating. Come on. I know you're down here. You're not fooling me. Good God, don't make me get on my hands and knees on live internet. Which it looks like that may happen. Oh, come on. You've got to be right here. Okay. It looks like it's hands and knees time. But I have a special weapon for that. Okay. Don't say you don't get your money's worth out of this channel. Plastic, plastic, plastic. Here, styrene. Well, actually, you'd be acrylic, wouldn't you? Oh. Ah, got it. Aha! Dun, dun. Oops. Dun, dun, dun! The irony is, I'll probably wind up using the vacuum form kit. That was more salvaging my pride. Oh, whoa! Get back here. Well, I'm back. I'm back. Nothing to see here, folks. Well, no wonder I couldn't find it. I got the computer glasses on. Oh! Hell, that was fun. Overall, this seems to be just a standard Matchbox kit with all that implies. And we'll have to see how the parts fit when I build it. But I find Matchbox kits are, kind of what you expect from them, given their price point and everything. The propeller trying to sneak away on me. Okay, I don't like that. Hold on. Yep, there it is. Okay. And here's the instruction sheet. All right. It's all back together. And yes, that happens in the hotel room sometime. I found myself numerous times searching hotel carpets, which are almost always gray. They're guaranteed to be gray if the plastic on the model is gray. Just read some of the comments here. If it was a Lego piece, you'd have found it in there. Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, you guys got anything else before we call it a day? We've been going at this for a couple hours, including one total reboot. I'll see if I can, some of those links I was talking about, and when I get this thing up, I'll see if I can't link them down in the comment section. Dart tips and call for, gosh, that's outright ambushing sabotage. Squirrels, rats, painted. Oh yeah. Gosh, I have got. Oh, I know. I could have been wearing this during the show today. The mighty 8th Air Force hat. There are so many shows that I want to produce, but it's just only so many time, so much time. This book that Rick sent me on the golden age of air racing has got so much great information in it, and trenching so deep, you can see X-wing and Y-wing fly low on the magnifying glass. Oh yeah. I don't know. On the launch tower, I haven't made my mind up. I thought about using the original plans and the paper and everything and replacing it with plastic, stock plastic like I-beams and stuff. But the more I look at it, I realize that is a multi-year commitment. If I decide to make a launch umbilical tower, I don't want to make it out of paper. I want to make it out of plastic and multimedia. And if I'm going to do that, that's not something you just sit down to do. It's just too much work. That's the kind of thing that I would probably make like an ongoing long-term project to work on it when you feel like it. I forget what they're like 17 platforms and everything. And I didn't appreciate not only did I not appreciate how complicated the launch umbilical tower is, and I knew one of the engineers that actually worked on it, but I also, depending on which rocket you're putting on, that thing changed just like everything else. You look at, you watch you study this stuff too much when you can watch archival footage. You go, oh, that's got to be Apollo 11 because it's got that, or it's got to be Apollo 15 because it's got that. That thing changed a lot over time. As did no two Apollo Saturns were identical. They all had changes in it. And well, thanks, Kibble. I plan to do some more. Next, World War I flying squirrels. Rocky and Bullwinkle's grandparents. Well, Rocky's anyway. Absolutely, Kenneth. Send them when you get it done. Send the pictures. As long as it's a model and you built it, we'll run it on the viewer's build. Absolutely. Doesn't matter what's a model of. I don't care if it's Gundam or Kaiju or Militaria or cars or figures or Hollywood, cowboys, history, buildings, bridges, anything you build a model of. If it's a kit and you build, I don't care what the medium is. I don't care if it's resin, wood, plastic, tissue, paper. As long as it's a model. It's something you had to make. I don't care if it's a scratch build or resin. What I don't consider models are things that come that are already made. You just stick them together. If you're not having to use any glue or any paint, it's not really a model, in my humble opinion. And I think that's part of the difference between assembly. If someone sends you an erector set and you use a screw and you use a screw and a wrench, you're assembling something. But if you got to shave, paint, sand, file, do all the stuff, yeah. Now when you just get a bunch of parts that can just be put together, it's not. I guess it is a model, but not the way I sort of see it. I have a pretty broad view of what constitutes a model, and I know all of us are painting and filing and scraping and fitting and stuff, and there's the artisanship, but the and I love these die-cast models that people get, but they're already built, so there's really no. And somebody sent me a picture, said here's something. If somebody sends me a picture of here's a die-cast model that I bought, well, that's nice to see. I love seeing it, but I wouldn't put it in a viewer's build because you didn't really build it. And that's it. It's the building of it. Well, that's my humble opinion anyway. Okay, Claire, I'm glad you were able to make it. Oh, really? Huh. Okay, well, I'll have to get the bridge back open. Yeah, I was very lucky when I did the thing on Cult TV Man that he was willing to help. He took quite a bit of time to make a lot of corrections, so I got the information right. I didn't actually get a chance to speak with him, but I admire these guys' commitment, and they're what is they said in The Right Stuff when the two guys, one of them's Jeff Goldblum, they got to meet the test pilots at Pancho Barnes' place, and he says it's like a mad monk society. I'm like, these guys who run model building companies, these small ones like Cult TV Man, Atlantis, Glencoe, it's kind of like a mad monk society. These guys, they really have to love what they're doing to be able to to put up with the crap they put up with. And I thought about doing one of the personalities on Pancho Barnes, because she did race, but she was never like a big champion race pilot. But what I was surprised is just how prevalent, given that it was the 1930s, just how prevalent women pilots were in that era of racing. And it's true they had the Powder Puff Derby. Don't forget they also won some of the other races too, some of the regular races, and they had to convince the race organizers to let them race with the men. And was it Blanche Noyes won? I think it was the Bendix in 35 or something, and flying a Stagger Wing Beach. And Jackie Cochran won at one time, and there's so I'll be covering some of them at some point, I hope. I don't know how long the series is going to go because there's so much history to cover. And then there's also the one-off airplanes. God, I did not realize how many weird-looking airplanes people were building in their garages that flew, and they raced these things, and sometimes successfully. I got to do one on Steve Whitman. Geez, the guy... I didn't realize it when Jimmy Weddell got his investment. Was it Harry Williams? I think that invested it. He got him to invest $2 million in 30s. Think about how much that was worth today. So that's one reason he was able to make these really excellent aircraft. But he did it all from, eyeball. He couldn't even read a blueprint. Oh, different times. And I took my instrument rating from a designated examiner who'd been one of the 99. She was one of the women's air service pilots in World War II. She was a little too young to have been in the race era, but she knew a lot of them that were. She knew Jackie Cochran and Nancy Harkness Love and a lot of the others. And what I really found interesting is they were fine pilots, but they never gave up anything to be that. They were also very much ladies, and you don't have to give up one to be the other. They were very, very classy people, and I see the old archival footage of these guys working on these airplanes, a lot of which they built in their garages or hangars, and I'm just thinking, and I know this is exactly what you expect a commercial airline pilot has to deal with the FAA to say, but and I'm not trying to knock the FAA. They have an important job, and by and large, they do a good job. But, and there's always a but, one of the reasons that these garage inventors were able to do what they did to make these incredibly fast, lightweight airplanes that did this on very small engines was because there was virtually no government interference. They could just make it and fly it. And if it flew, it flew. And if it crashed, they died. And that was that. And the next person stepped up and just kept on going. And that freedom to fail, that freedom to try, and of course the good old motivation of winning the race both for ego and money. You mix that little cocktail up together, and people can come up with a lot of things real fast. One of the reasons we've seen the internet and everything grow as fast as it did is it grew largely without government regulation. I'll guarantee you mark my words, the minute the government starts stepping in and saying, okay, you've got to have permits and everything to do this, and you can't do it, the technology, the development will slow down, because then it'll only be the big companies that can afford it. Right now, I will wager you right now, some guy is working in his basement or garage, or some gal is working in their studio or something on the next big thing. The next disruptive technology is one motivated, intelligent, uninterrupted, unfettered inventor away from taking over. That freedom to fail. You've got to be free to fail. One of the reasons that they were talking about that the several I don't like to use the word countries because a country is a big thing. It's more like, let's say, institutions. One of the reasons several institutions have some political and others, different kinds of organizations, have failed is because they were intolerant of any failure. If you said you could do something and you didn't deliver the first time around, off with his head. And, you just don't get a lot of development under that. Yep. How many rockets did NASA blow up before they got it right? How many did Elon Musk blow up before he got it right? And, research for internet got go. This is true. ARPA, DARPA, the DARPA net. That's absolutely true, and they built the backbone of the thing. That is a fair statement. More than anything else, I think though they gave it direction. The people forget about when it comes to NASA. NASA rarely invents anything. NASA was just an organization that directed what money went where, and what this is what we're looking for. We're the customer, and they help prevent a duplication of effort. So what else we got? Well, tricky things, time machines, and what is the last thing he says in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh, we're all time was ending. Oh, we're out of time. early Atlas, the inflatable rocket. For those who don't know, Atlas didn't really have much of a structure. The actual chemicals inside it were pressurized, and that helped stiffen it. And of course, once it burned the fuels off, hopefully it was far enough up that there was no resistance from the atmosphere. Those things blew up left and right. Favorite Herbie movie? Herbie the Love Bug is the original. Gene Jones, Buddy Hackett. And I think it was Bernard Fox. Time Tunnel's good, although I was more of a fan of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. God. I can't believe that Back to the Future, we're already past the point in the future that the second episode went into. And they got some of it right. I should probably build a model of the DeLorean. It is a staple of modern sci-fi. Okay, guys. Well, I guess that's all for this one. Hope you've all had a little bit of fun. Glad you guys can make it. Sorry for the computer glitches. I have no idea what happened. I mean, it literally locked the computer up. So I will sign off now. Let you guys go about your day. I'll leave the comment section up for a few minutes so you can chat with each other. I want you guys to take care and model on.